Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. What's up? This is Aaron X with
Dr. Jeffrey Foster.
and we are
Disturbing
Disturbing the Peace. Here, where we talk about critical issues related to urban education, minoritized students, and underrepresented students.
Yep.
We give a real account about societal issues that are continue to monopolize our youth and
Yeah.
today's educational landscape.
Yes, most definitely. And we are just happy to be here. We're happy to chat with y'all.
Yes.
I'm excited about today's discussion.
Yes, it's gonna get real, y'all.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Well, even before we get to that, today, as you probably noticed, we have a different setup. We are here at Dr. Foster's alma mater school, and we may be using this space a little bit more often. So, like Dr. Foster said, today's gonna be a really good session, really
Yeah.
good conversation. So today, we're talking about race. And that's all I'm really gonna give you. You want to give
Yes.
any more information?
No, we're just talking about race and equity and all of that jazz
Yes.
as it relates to minoritized students, in particular, students of color, BIPOC.
Yes, yes. So before we get started, again, we have a special treat for you. There's this video that is surfaced. It's been a couple of months since it's been out, but it's still relevant to the conversation that we're going to have today, especially with the SCOTUS, with the ruling on affirmative action and access to higher education. So please take a listen. Oh.
Okay.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phil. Do any of you think white people are
You're trying to segregation in this country, senior leaders, or
but not discrimination? What do you mean?
well, I would separate prejudice from racism as being two different things, which is a little bit different.
Do you make racism and discrimination as two different things?
I would say that I would see prejudice and discrimination as more falling in the same realm. So I would say this: you can the priorities that are provided within some of the corporate incentive programs that you featured there, right? Those priorities are really not priorities. What they are is they recognize that historically, those companies have not done a good job within their senior leadership ranks. They got 7%, 8% of their senior leaders who are from minoritized communities. And so what they're doing is they're creating access to opportunity by having programs. And these are small programs. So what they're really just doing is trying to open a door. And as you try to open a door just a little bit, the accusation is, well, somehow that's not fair. But you know what's really not fair is the history of racism and segregation in this country, which pervades to today, which is the reason why we see college admissions and companies doing these things to try to create more opportunity. But even with those opportunities that are created by these programs, they're not disadvantaging white people. They're simply creating an opportunity.
But if you make a decision based on the color of someone's skin, isn't that racist?
No. If you're making a decision based upon the color of someone's skin, is that racist? I would say no, because in this particular case, what you're doing is you're trying to rectify a historical wrong. You're trying to create an opportunity.
We have to take a break. We come back and want to hear from the audience about what these two have had to say. Coming up, our country, as our country become obsessed with race, is the media to blame? We'll talk about that when we come back.
You're making the assumption that black students are academically inferior, and they're not.
No, you are.
You just said that they don't belong there.
That was unlikely to get in.
Hiring practices, dismissal practices in industry, is that not systemic?
You could nitpick and find little instances on both sides. But I think if you look at it as a whole, then you begin to understand where it's coming from.
Who else has a comment? Yes, sir, in the back.
My name is Dan, and I think it's great that you try to fix some of the inequities that have happened in the past. But I don't think it should jump to the front of the line when you're going to college or you're trying to get a job. I think it's important that we address it very early on, where a lot of the major issues are happening in the families of some of the ones that are maybe disadvantaged, or if they're having trouble in school, it started at the elementary school level, where once they get to the admissions process or get to a job interview, it's based on your merit.
Candace, are we compromising standards?
Yes.
If we do that, because we haven't fixed the problem down the line?
That's correct. It is, the policies are harmful also to the people that they purport to help. And we have all of the evidence there to look at. When you artificially place a Black American into a school in which they do not belong based on their knowledge, doesn't mean that they go on to get A's. In fact, there was a Black adjunct professor, you guys have definitely heard of him, Dr. Thomas Sowell, who was teaching at Cornell University, and he found that the majority of the Black American students that were there were on academic probation. Now, these students were some of the smartest in the nation, but because they were artificially placed amongst their peers at Cornell University, they were failing on academic probation. These policies have never helped Black Americans. It's just basically policies that are put in place to make people feel good, right? I feel like I'm doing something when in fact I'm actually creating harm. You either know the answers or you don't.
Well, sharing that comment and joining our conversation is political commentator and activist Candace Owens, and also joining us is Professor and Chief Academic Officer for the University of Southern California Race and Equity Center, Dr. John Pasquarella. And you're right about Thomas Sowell. He also said equal opportunity policies are against racism. Affirmative action is racism under new management. He said it just doesn't work, it doesn't help, and never has, and he tracked this over like 50 years. And he's a Black professor, by the way. John, what do you think about this?
I think that, each college admissions committee that comes up with policies to consider someone's racial identity or racial background and experiences as one of many factors in the constellation of competitive factors that are considered is a good thing in institutions that have historically excluded people of color from admission to their universities.
Can I just ask a question? How do you consider it when we're telling you factually, in effect, it is a bad thing for the Black students?
What are the constellations of factors that involve them thriving or not? Is it solely due to their race?
I know it's due to their intellectual capabilities, which is how students should be judged. And I do want to say
Is that limited to just their race?
It's not limited to just their race, which is why that would be an equal policy if you allow people to be judged based on their merit, on their merit, not based on their skin color. Yeah. It also, there's something about it that's very patronizing. You're a Black person, so I assume that you can't get on this school based on your merit. I don't think Sasha and Malia Obama are people that have struggled and therefore should be allowed to get into the college universities on a higher basis than white kids that have worked harder than them, especially Asian Americans, which we never discuss. And are probably the most discriminated against in this country when it comes to universities.
When you say, hey, we have Black students at a particular school who aren't performing at that school as well, the immediate assumption that you're making is, well, maybe it's because they're not smart enough, they're not good enough, or they don't belong here. Whereas it could be about the experience that they're having at that institution. Professors who believe that they're not intelligent enough, that they don't have the capability to do the work, that they see them as criminals, deviants, dangerous, up to no good, or they talk about them with the they statements. They're lazy. They don't care. They don't really belong here. They're only here for the financial gain.
I'm giving you actual facts.
No, I'm giving you actual facts based on extensive
say, well, maybe they just don't feel good. But that's not the case. I mean, I went to university. I did not feel good, right? I didn't pull the best grades in high school, probably got into a better university than I should have gotten into based on my performance in high school. It wasn't because of my feelings. It's because I wasn't focused on it. And that, we're talking about a cultural problem, what's going on back at home, as was in my circumstance. None of that is because of institutionalized policy. It almost seems like you guys refuse to accept that, Black students aren't performing well. You feel like you have to have this burden of responsibility when in fact, if you actually wanted to help, you would look at the facts, re-examine the fact that it's not helping anybody. It's not helping Black Americans to artificially place them into universities, and you'd make effective change.
But you're making the assumption that Black students are academically inferior, and they're not.
No,
they're
you are
actually.
That's the basic. No. That you are making the assumption that they are inferior.
You just said that they don't belong there.
Policies. I'm talking about the students that are based on the policies that you are defending right now, saying that we should have these policies that let them into these universities, not based on their skill set, but based on the color of their skin. So you are assuming that they are inferior.
Why are there so many discrimination lawsuits against companies lately?
All right, y'all, there was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
As we talk about, as they spoke about reverse racism, as they spoke about the admissions policies, as they talked about how Dr. J. Luke Wood talked about how professors are doing the black students that are attending these schools. And then, of course, you hear Candace Owens talking about the policies and regulations towards minoritized students. So, Dr. Foster, like, what are your immediate thoughts from watching the video?
Well, I first want to say I'm not going to say a whole lot. This is not my area of expertise, but I do have a lot of opinions about this.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I'm just thinking, first of all, we are not thinking about the fact, we're not talking about systemic racism, first of all. We're not talking about how students they're being taught curriculum that is not conducive, it's not relevant, it's not responsive to them. We're not talking about how students are not getting the equitable education from highly effective teachers. We're not talking about how there are segregated schools everywhere. We're not talking about the fact that a lot of these children are coming from descendants of slaves that were not able to read. There's a lot of systemic things going on that affect students and their performance, but I just feel like they were not talking about all those issues.
Who was they?
And when I say they, I mean the people that were in the video.
You don't think Dr. Lugo mentioned some?
I don't feel like he went all the way in.
I don't think he went all the way in either.
Yes.
That is true. And no, I definitely agree with you. Like, and those are not opinions, those are indeed facts.
Right.
It is a fact that education has been stolen. It is a fact that education today is based on Eurocentric standards. So I do not feel that what you're saying was all opinion. I do think some of the things that you stated were facts, and it's important for us to know every curriculum that's out there is not, it doesn't represent the black population or the black and brown population.
Yes.
And if it does, then it's getting banned due to racist notions of teaching critical race theory or having race conscious conversations in a classroom.
Right.
It is definitely important. And I want to articulate real quickly before we speak about Dr. Luke Wood, what he had to say. I want to address what Candace Owens said about the policies and procedures. And we have to understand that, okay, I'm gonna go back. We have to understand what whiteness, as it relates to white identity, white entanglement, and that sort of thing. So once we start to understand whiteness and then privilege, then we can start to understand the country at the core. And then white, if you think about it, it's the only race or ethnicity that doesn't have to claim their own individuality, if that makes any sense. We have blacks, African American. You have Native American, you have Asian, you have a specific islander. All those fall into a sort of different category. Whereas a white person can either not categorize themselves as white, or they might be light skinned or fair skinned.
They're American. They just American, period.
That's it. That's the point I was getting at.
Yes.
They are American. It's not a such thing as white or whiteness. We are all fall under the same core value of being an American.
So basically, American culture is supposedly white culture.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
That's the problem. And by American culture being white culture offers dominance and offers privilege. And privilege also equals what, Dr. Foster?
Power, and it's all about power, privilege, and education.
It's all about, and I know for those who tuned in on our Instagram Live yesterday, this is something that we talked about, but we're just going a little bit more in depth as relates to our post-realistic society, as relates to our social stratifications and conditions. Even as black men, as professors, this is something we have to understand and realize, that the policy and the procedures are written by those who are in power.
There you go.
Majority of presidents and deans and faculty members and associate vice presidents, chief academic officers, most are predominantly white and male, unless you attend HBCU, which stands for Historically Black College and University. So most of them are white. So Jay Lukewood was saying that, Candace Owens was saying that Jay Lukewood was defending the policy, when in fact, Candace Owens was defending a policy that continues to keep us suppressed and oppressed as relates to our educational outcome. It impacts black students. So she was talking about, Candace Owens was talking about being artificially placed into schools. She even brought up an example about Cornell University and how these students wasn't able to be successful or to succeed based on their merit, when in fact it's the policies that are put in place that is meant for them to fail. And the country at its core is inherently racist.
Yes, and I just want to say, speaking of Candace, I mean, she seems so passionate
For sure.
about this topic, and I'm like, what childhood trauma do you have? I'm definitely sensing some internalized racism, and another thing is she kept talking about facts.
But she didn't present any facts.
Yeah, I was saying, when you give me the
What was your facts?
I want the statistics, I want the numbers, I want some hardcore data.
And the only person she referenced was the professor at Cornell University, which, not to discredit him, but that was the only fact.
But there wasn't.
There was no data.
Yeah.
There's no data to support that study that Dr. Phil mentioned that he conducted over 50 years. So if you're going to talk about data, let's talk about the numbers. Let's talk about who this is affecting. Let's talk about what changes has been made or in the process of being made as it relates to data. Yeah, so you are exactly right. And we are researchers. Dr. Luke Wood is a prominent educator who his life's work is all about equity and inclusion as it relates to minoritized populations.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so, and then let's go back to talk about Jay Lukewood when he was talking about professors and how professors treated certain minority students, whether they said that they were lazy or they didn't have the information they needed. This is a real life issue. As you know, we are educators. We were in the trenches. We know what it's like to have 40 students in a classroom. We know what it's like to not have the necessary materials you need for you to be successful. We know what it's like not to have a principal or a board, in your case, that is not supportive. We know what it's like dealing with our students. Until you have entered the classroom, until you have sat with a parent and been cussed out, until you have students walk out on you.
Preach.
Until, I'm going in.
Wow.
Until you had teachers to walk out on you, until you had a teacher coming up to the school trying to fight another student, until you had a teacher that's trying to fight a student, until you had all these systemic issues, I advise you to close your mouth on what you don't know what you're talking about. Yes. And this goes for anybody in education.
Leave it to the experts.
Leave it to the experts. Trust me, we know what we're talking about. If we did not know what we were talking about, we would not be in the field of education. Education, as you know, don't pay any money.
Yeah.
Whatsoever, but we don't do it for the money. We do it because we're passionate about it and we love to make changes in our community. 1.3% of black males represent the teacher population. 1.3%. If you want to pull the census data,
yes.
If you want to pull the census data for all teachers in the United States, you will see, depending on how many teachers are there, that black males represent 1.3% of teachers. Black male teachers represent 1.3% of the teacher male population. So we are in that population. We are our research. Furthermore, black women represents 76% of black women teachers who are in education. And by the way, You can find this.
Could you repeat that? You said 76%?
76%.
Of what?
Black women teachers.
All black men? All
Black women.
So out of all black teachers, women represent 76%.
Yes.
As opposed to men. Okay.
Yes. And then this data came from the Pew Research Center. Please go check it out. And then furthermore, white teachers represents 80% of the education field. 80%. That means that 80% of teachers are teaching their predominantly underserved populations.
That part. Because 50%, over 50% now of the students in public education are of color.
Yes, are of color. Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why. However, I just wanted to make the statement that, make that connection with you, that you said 80% of all teachers happen to be white.
Yep.
Then over half of the students happen to be students of color. There's going to be some cultural incongruencies going on.
Yes.
Are these teachers prepared to work with these students?
Multicultural and diverse students. Yeah.
Are they coming into the classroom with biases?
Right.
And do they believe that these students can actually learn?
Right.
Why is there segregated schools?
Right.
Why are there urban Title I schools with mostly black and brown students?
Right.
There's a lot.
It is. It really is. The educational system, as we know it, is very corrupt. Whether you want to believe it or not, it is very corrupt. Why is one kid on the south side of Charlotte is not getting the same resources as the kid on the west side of Charlotte? It's that great divide. It's
power, privilege, and its impact in education.
Very much so. It's been impacting education. So I do agree with you that Dr. Luke Wood could have went in a little bit more, but I understand, the platform and things of that nature. And if you guys did not know, he is now currently the president of, I believe, it's not San Diego State. I think it's Sacramento, California, I believe. But he's now the president there. But his research is very impactful in the community, especially in DEI spaces. So I encourage you to go check him out a little bit more and to continue and following this conversation, because it is a conversation that needs to be had. Racism is real, it is alive, it permeates throughout the country. It has been present even before slavery. It was present when, you guys don't want to hear it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It was present when Socrates and Plato's went over to ancient Egypt and stole the inventions and everything of ancient Egypt and claimed them as their own, as the great philosophers with the systems over there and the late nature, and claimed that Aristotle wrote over 100 books when W.B. Du Bois, in his lifetime at the age of 90, only wrote about 30 books. So
riddle me that. And then that was also a time of war, and they weren't able to do a lot of the writings that they said that they did.
Yeah.
It came from somewhere.
The names were changed. Ptahhotep was the first book in America. But you won't see that unless you know it, because the names hasn't been changed.
Correct.
Our names has been stolen and rebranded to something else.
Yes.
I'm going to say that one more time. Can I say that again?
Yes.
Our names has been changed and rebranded to something else. Education as we know it is stolen and it's under attack.
Stolen legacy. A stolen legacy.
Stolen legacy. But these are the conversations that are not being had in K-12 education, and these are the conversations that we need to be having, especially if we're going to represent our minoritized youth.
Yes, and that's that critical literacy that needs to be taught in these classrooms.
Yes.
And a lot of states and a lot of individuals don't want that being taught. But at least teach the truth.
Tell the truth.
Or just give multiple perspectives.
Right.
And let students formulate their own consciousness,
right.
Developing around what is taught.
Right. have them experience their own social realities.
Yes.
You know, because if I'm constantly telling students about European history, then we're going to grow up believing in European history.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that we should not know Eurocentricity. I'm not saying that white students can't benefit from understanding our culture. What I'm saying is it should all be inclusive. We want to use the word inclusive and throw it around very loosely because it benefits the different organizations and different groups of people to know that they did something well. They were the token organization. What did you say earlier? The white savior?
I did say that. I talked about
savior?
that a little bit in our last podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
White savior complex.
Yeah, trying to be the white savior. But let's keep it 100. Let's keep it 100.
Uh-oh.
It's not about being a white savior. It's about getting accolades for your company in order for you to progress. If we're gonna talk about it, let's be real. That's what it is.
A lot of these seed organizations don't have the best interests of minoritized individuals, especially minoritized students, and that really that breaks my heart.
I agree.
It really does.
And then it goes back to the conversation of affirmative action.
Yeah.
You know, I do agree with Candace Owens on the fact that hire me because of my merit, not because of the color of my skin.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with that because I work extremely hard, and I know you have as well.
Yes.
From where we are to this day.
Ooh.
Don't pity me. Do not pity me. Don't pity me. Do not put me under a rock because I'm not under a rock.
But wait a minute. If I'm gonna tell you how I feel. If you're not gonna hire me based on my skin color, if you're
going to hire me based on my skin color?
going to hire me for my skin color,
I don't want to work there.
Then guess what? Don't turn around and not hire me for my skin color. And that's what I'm thinking in my head right now. The problem is a lot of individuals, affirmative action doesn't really help many people at all.
Nope.
But there are so many people that are hiring based on skin color and names and things like that. That's what we need to be focusing on. Candace needs to be focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about how she has mixed kids. They're not black, they're mixed. But let me tell you this. People are going to say your kids are black.
Right.
Your kids have been discriminated against and will be discriminated against the rest of their lives. And so they need some extra support sometimes because there are people out here who will not hire you because of the color of your skin. And also, they will have, it could be subconscious. There's a lot of subconscious hiring and things like that. And then everything's all about networking.
Right.
But how are you networking if you are everybody around you looks the same color?
So are you arguing for affirmative action?
I have to do a little more research on affirmative action before I can answer that question, but I know how I feel. I know that I feel that affirmative action helps more people than others, and I feel like maybe it's not helping black people enough.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I agree with that sentiment. I agree with that statement. I was watching a LinkedIn video, and there was this lady who was speaking about her affirmative action and how she has a really great position at a university, and she was talking about how that she would not have got that position if somebody wouldn't have came and recruited her for the position, and affirmative action worked in her favor at that particular point in time.
Yeah, but how many people have not gotten a job because they're black? I'm willing to bet you I'm one of those people. My resume looks pretty good for my age.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that I have been discriminated against.
Yeah.
When people see my face and they see that you're a young black man, I know those preconceived notions and
starts
those
to kick in.
Yes.
Yep.
Subconsciously,
Yep.
We're gonna say that not everybody does it overtly, but there's a lot of subconscious things that that's going on in people's minds.
For sure, and it continues to plague our country.
Yes.
So in order to uproot systemic racism, we have to unlearn a lot of biases within ourselves.
Exactly. We all have them.
We all have them. Even I have them. You know, I'm sure you have some of them as well.
Yes.
One of my favorite quotes I like to say: "We're not perfect, but we are perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
And which is fine. It's okay to admit you have some biases. It's okay, or because you have one black friend that doesn't make you a racist. You know what I'm saying? Like we hear it all the time.
But be aware.
Exactly. Be aware. Be conscious of it, and don't shy away. And don't try to dress it up either. You know, but there's a lot of microcosms out here as well.
There is microaggressions and all of that.
And I'm going to tell one quick story. So I was working at this private school, and it's funny. I was thinking about this yesterday after we finished our live on Instagram, and I was working at this one school, and it was a private institution.
Yeah.
And you know my niche, my niche is second graders. So after leaving the school that I was a part of, where we was coworkers, I had went to that school sometime afterwards, and again I was teaching second grade. I was the only black teacher in the elementary school.
Oh wow!
So the elementary school probably had maybe 250, maybe 300 students. I was the only black male teacher in the building, mostly surrounded by white women. And now my team, the team lead on my team was very cool, very sweet. She made a comment one day like, "Oh, like Aaron, you just like my son." 2 weeks I was fired. And I was fired because I would go on my lunch breaks to go get food. Right up the street there was a gas station that served really great fried chicken that I really liked.
Yeah.
So I would go there during my breaks and I would come back while my students were at specials.
Yes.
Now the same team lead who, of course she was a white woman, middle-aged white woman, and my team lead would smile in my face and, "Hey Aaron, how you doing? I hope things are well." But it's the same person who told the principal of lower school that I was leaving early. I never was told that I couldn't leave campus. So the team lead decided to withhold the information from me. So therefore, it got me fired from the job that I was at. Now, to be honest, I was already looking for jobs anyway because I knew where I was. It was a Christian institution as well. So I think it was Presbyterian, which has a whole nother set of principles and beliefs with it. And so that is one way of like racism is very covert.
Yes.
You know, it's literally in your face. And unless you are privy to certain conversations and certain mannerisms and how you're being treated by individuals, people and persons, you would think they the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to encourage everybody to go to the Harvard implicit bias test. It's free, and just check out what your implicit biases are, so that you're not showing up and harming people.
Right. And as you said earlier, which I think is a great point, is so you can be aware of your own consciousness and your own biases.
Yeah.
And it's okay. We all have them. We're not saying you're a bad person because you have them. It makes you a bad person when you're not standing in solidarity to make these changes in which we are seeking to see.
Yeah. Ooh, that was pretty heavy.
That was a heavy conversation. That was heavy. But look, thank you for joining us. We appreciate the conversation. Please be sure to follow us. As a matter of fact, we're about to do a promotional video about following us. So be sure to check us out on all social media platforms.
Yes.
Spotify,
Instagram,
TikTok, Twitter,
YouTube,
LinkedIn,
Apple Podcasts.
Yes, so we're on all social media platforms. We're still building up each platform, but feel free to join us, follow the conversation. And this has been another podcast of Disturbing the Peace. All right, peace out, y'all.
Later.
Gotta turn off the...